Martha was 65 when she finally said it out loud. The truth that had been weighing on her for years. She had no pension, no savings, no husband to lean on, and most painful of all, no real place in the life of the one person she had poured everything into. Her only son. From the outside, she was just another older woman living quietly in a rented apartment on the edge of town. Nothing about her stood out. No one gave her a second glance. But beneath the quiet, behind those tired eyes and weathered hands, lived a story marked by devotion, heartbreak, and silent endurance. She had spent her life doing what was expected. Raising a child, losing a husband far too soon, and working herself into exhaustion just to keep food on the table. Yet at the end of it all, she had no nest egg, no sense of security, and no one checking in to see if she was okay. For years, she thought this was just what getting older meant, that you slowly fade out of relevance, that if you weren't useful, you were invisible, that if you weren't needed, you weren't loved. But what Martha discovered, what she had to discover the hard way, is that even when everything seems lost, there is strength in choosing yourself. This is not a story about being left behind. It's a story of reclaiming dignity, of finding peace on your own terms. And if you've ever felt unseen, forgotten, or unworthy, then this story may just be yours too. 1. The loss, when everything fell apart. Martha had always pictured old age as peaceful, a time to exhale after a life of hard work. She saw herself rocking on the front porch beside her husband, Tom, watching the sky blush pink over the hills of Kentucky. She imagined Sunday dinners, the smell of roast chicken, laughter from grandkids in the yard. It wasn't a grand dream, just a tender one, a simple, quiet life filled with love. But life, as Martha would come to understand, doesn't always honor the blueprints we draw in our hearts. The day Tom died was bitterly cold. By mid-morning, the sky had already dulled to gray, and a slow mist crawled across the fields. Tom had left before sunrise, just like always. He kissed her forehead, filled his thermos with coffee, and smiled. "Don't wait up, hun," he said. She never did. But that day, she would have given anything to break that habit. The call came around noon. A foreman, his voice heavy with something between guilt and dread, told her there'd been an accident. A scaffolding collapsed. Tom never made it to the hospital. There was nothing anyone could have done. At first, Martha didn't cry. Her hands shook, but her eyes remained dry. She walked back into the kitchen where a pot of stew still simmered on the stove. She turned off the flame, sat at the table, and stared at the floor for what may have been hours. The funeral passed in a fog. People spoke kindly, hands touched her shoulders, and casseroles appeared like clockwork. But it all felt distant, as if she were watching it unfold from the rafters of someone else's tragedy. A week later, a man from the construction company came to her door. He didn't meet her eyes. He handed her a check and mumbled about how the company didn't carry proper insurance. They were barely staying afloat, he said. The check was for $40,000. If you want to fight it in court, that's your right, he added, not unkindly but with a hollow finality. But the money won't be there. It's this or nothing. Her hands, chapped from decades of farm work, trembled as she held the paper. $40,000. It felt like a slap. It felt like someone had priced her husband's life like a damaged appliance. Blood money. Still, she took it, folded it gently, and placed it in the drawer where Tom's wallet, glasses, and old wristwatch still sat untouched. She told no one, not even Jacob. She couldn't bring herself to say it aloud. That her husband's entire life had been reduced to less than the cost of a new car. Without Tom's income, things tightened fast. The house wasn't luxurious, but the bills added up. Heating, oil, groceries, property taxes. She cut meat from their meals. She sewed and patched anything that could still be worn. She sold eggs from the henhouse. Neighbors paid her for mending torn sleeves and repairing worn-out buttons. Jacob, still in high school, did what he could. He even offered to skip college and get a job, but Martha shook her head. "Your daddy wanted more for you," she told him. "You'll get there." But beneath her firm voice was fear, not just of falling behind on bills or being alone, but of fading away entirely, of becoming another widow with a forgotten story, dissolving quietly into the background of a world that had already moved on. 2. The sacrifice, giving it all to the ones we love. Jacob had always carried a restless fire inside him, the kind of youthful ambition that crackled without direction. After high school, he had dreams but no clear path. His test scores weren't strong enough for scholarships, and tuition was far beyond what Martha could afford on her own. Still, Jacob wanted more. He needed to get out of their small town to chase something bigger than patchy part-time work and second-hand dreams. "I'm going to Chicago," he told her one morning over dry toast. "There are real jobs out there. I can make decent money, Mom, mechanic stuff, oil changes, brakes, the works." Martha's heart sank, but she smiled and nodded. He was just 18, barely grown but already reaching for the horizon. Who was she to stand in his way? He was her son, and she had spent a lifetime giving him every chance she never had. Before he left, she pressed a worn envelope into his hands. $1,000 in cash, saved over months by cutting coupons, skipping meals, and stretching pennies into weeks. "For emergencies," she said gently. "Only if you really need it." Jacob hugged her close, kissed her cheek, and promised to call every Sunday. And at first, he kept his word. His calls lit up her week. He told her about the screech of trains in the city, the way even the nights felt loud. He'd landed a job at a garage, starting from the bottom, but the manager liked him. There was possibility in his voice. But a few months in, his tone shifted. "Mom," he said one Sunday, quieter than usual, "can I ask you something?" Rent was eating him alive. $1,000 a month just for a shoebox apartment. "That's 12 grand a year gone," he said. "I'm throwing it away, but if I had help with a down payment, I could buy a place. I found a unit. Small, but it's something. I just need the money from Dad." Martha went still. That money had never been touched. For 2 years, it waited in the dark, folded neatly in the back of a drawer beside Tom's glasses, his wallet, and the watch he'd worn daily for 20 years. To her, it wasn't just money. It was sacred. A lifeline, a last safety rope if everything collapsed. But Jacob's voice was soft, almost pleading. "It's for both of us, Mom. One day I'll bring you here. We'll live in it together. You won't have to worry anymore." She wanted to believe him. She needed to, so she said yes. The very next morning, she walked into the bank and transferred all $40,000 to Jacob's account. No hesitation, no fanfare. Just a mother choosing her son again. Jacob bought the apartment. It was barely finished. Unpainted walls, a single mattress, one small window with a distant view of the skyline. He sent her a photo. She printed it out and tacked it above her sewing machine where she could see it every day. She started working harder than ever, planting extra rows in the garden, sewing until her fingers ached, raising 2 pigs instead of 1. During the holidays, she sold jams, baked pies, and sent Jacob every dollar she could scrape together. That Christmas, he came home for a visit. She slipped him $500 in cash. "For paint or furniture," she said with a smile. He took it without much comment. She never asked for anything in return. The flicker of pride in his eyes, however brief, was enough. Or so she told herself, what she didn't realize then. What no amount of mother's love could prepare her for was that this would mark the beginning of a quiet unraveling. Not a betrayal, not yet, but a slow fade. A shift where promises whispered over long-distance phone calls would be drowned out by silence. Where love would become a given, not a gift. And where Martha, someday, would have to face the hardest truth of all, that the life she had poured into her son would not be the one that carried her forward. 3. The invisible mother, forgotten but still here. Time doesn't break bonds, it thins them, quietly, without fanfare, until one day what used to be strong becomes barely visible. Martha didn't notice the exact moment things shifted with Jacob. Maybe it was when she started calling him more than he called her, or when his voice began sounding distracted, always half in another room, half in another life. What had started as weekly Sunday calls faded into every other week, then once a month, then silence that she had to interrupt. She never said anything about it, never asked why. She told herself he was busy. City life moved fast. Maybe he was working extra hours. Maybe he was building something for the future. Maybe he just needed space. But deep down, she knew, the distance was growing and it wasn't just miles on a map. Still, she sent packages. Boxes with oatmeal cookies in wax paper. Hand-knit socks she made by lamplight. Letters folded around $10 bills with careful handwriting. Stay warm, don't skip breakfast. I love you. Jacob rarely responded, but she clung to the idea that he smiled when he opened them, that he remembered who had taught him to tie his shoes and patch his jeans. That maybe, just maybe, he still felt her love. Then came the envelope. Not from her son, but from her neighbor Connie, who waved it in the air as Martha brought in the laundry. "Think this came to my mailbox by mistake," she said with a grin. "Congratulations." Martha took the envelope. Her hands trembled. Inside, thick paper, gold trim, elegant script, an invitation. Jacob was getting married in 2 weeks in Chicago. Her breath caught in her chest. He hadn't called, hadn't told her, not even a passing mention. No hint that her only son was about to start a new chapter, and had chosen not to include her in the first line. She didn't cry, not yet. She just folded the invitation and placed it beside the photo of Jacob on her nightstand. That night and the next, she stared at it in the dark, asking the question that haunted her most. Did he forget me? Or did he choose to leave me out? On the 4th day, she decided. She pulled her navy dress from the back of the closet. The one with lace trim, worn soft from years of church weddings and baptisms. She booked a Greyhound ticket. 12 hours, 2 transfers, no matter, she would go, she would witness. The chapel was striking. Modern, expensive. White roses lined the aisle. Sunlight spilled through high glass windows like stage lights on a play she hadn't been cast in. Martha found her name on a small card, printed neatly and placed at the very back. Near the exit, behind a pillar, she sat still, hands folded in her lap, invisible in a room full of tailored suits and pastel smiles. Jacob walked down the aisle. He didn't glance her way. She didn't cry. She didn't wave. She just watched. During the reception, she stood along the wall as if unsure whether she belonged to the scene or the staff. Her son danced, laughed, toasted, took photos, none with her. Once she lifted her hand, hoping he might catch her eye. He didn't, no introductions, no small talk, no place beside the bride and groom. She wasn't angry, she wasn't even shocked, just hollow. She left before dessert, quietly. Later, in a $40 motel room with thin walls and buzzing lights, Martha sat on the bed, her palms pressed tightly together. The silence was no different from home, but it felt heavier here. She whispered to the darkness. Not to the room, not to God, just to herself. I don't think he saw me. 4. The betrayal. Used, ignored, discarded. After the wedding, silence became Martha's new companion. It wasn't just the absence of Jacob's voice on the other end of the phone. It was something heavier, something that settled deep into the house like dust in the corners. Days passed, then weeks. No calls, no thank yous, the packages she sent. Jam jars, knitted scarves, cards tucked with $20 bills. Went unacknowledged. Birthday greetings were met with silence. Voicemails, too, she still tried. She told herself he was adjusting. Marriage was a big step. Maybe things would settle. Maybe he'd call next week, or the week after. But in her heart, she already knew. She wasn't part of the story anymore. Then came the gut punch. She was out watering the garden when her neighbor, Connie, leaned over the fence with a smile. "Heard the big news," she said. "Jacob's a dad now, huh? Baby girl, right?" Martha froze, the watering can still in her hand. Her throat tightened. She hadn't known, no phone call, no photo, not even a line of text. A granddaughter, her first grandchild. And she'd heard about it from a neighbor like it was idle gossip. Shaking, she went inside and picked up the phone. Her hands trembled as she dialed Jacob's number. It rang. Once, twice, 4 times. Then a voice answered, but not his. "Oh," the woman said coldly, "it's you." It was her daughter-in-law. "I just heard about the baby," Martha said, trying to keep her voice calm. "I didn't know." "Well," the voice replied sharply, "we've been busy. Jacob's overwhelmed. We don't have time to update everyone." Everyone, like she was a distant acquaintance, not a mother, not a grandmother. "I could have helped," Martha offered quietly. "I could have been there." A long pause, then a shift, calculating. "If you really want to help, come take care of the baby. We both work. We need someone during the week." Martha blinked, stunned. "I don't know if I can. My back I have trouble lifting." The voice sharpened to a blade. "Well, if you're too old to help, maybe you shouldn't expect anything from us. If you want Jacob to take care of you, you'd better be useful." Click, the phone felt hot in her hand. Her fingers curled tightly around it, her knuckles white. The words echoed in her head like sirens. "You need to be useful." She didn't scream, she didn't cry. She stood there in the quiet of her kitchen where the late sun painted golden lines across the tiles. The birds chirped outside. A breeze lifted the edge of a curtain. Life carried on, but inside her something broke, and something stronger began to form. It wasn't sorrow anymore, it was truth. All this time she had loved without conditions, given without limits, her money. Her care, her loyalty, her silence. She had poured herself into the people she loved until there was barely anything left of her. And now she was seen as disposable, a tool when needed, a burden when not. She sat at the old oak table Tom had built years ago. She looked out at the yard, once filled with Jacob's toys, now silent, and something shifted. She didn't feel rage, just resolve. She would not chase a son who no longer saw her. She would not offer herself up like scraps on a plate, waiting for someone else to decide if she had value. No, she had given enough, and now it was time to begin again. Not for them, but for her. 5, the turning point, the day she chose herself. In the days following that phone call, Martha didn't lash out. She didn't fall apart. There were no slammed doors or long sobs into the night. She just stopped. She stopped checking her phone, stopped glancing at the mailbox, stopped thinking maybe next week. She no longer arranged care packages or wrote birthday cards she knew would be ignored. Instead, she began to notice the silence around her, not just hear it, but feel it. The house that once held laughter, footsteps, smells of dinner simmering, it now echoed with absence. Tom was gone, Jacob had left, and what remained were shadows. The empty chair across from her, the untouched jars in the pantry, the porch swept daily though no one visited. For weeks she moved like a ghost in her own home. She'd wake early, then stay in bed. She'd wash the same cup twice. She'd sit by the window for hours, not really looking at anything at all. Then, one cold morning, everything changed with a small, sharp pain in her hip. She had bent to feed the hens, something she'd done for years. But this time her body protested. It wasn't just a twinge, it was a warning. If not now, when? She straightened up, eyes scanning the empty yard, the weather-worn barn, the brittle grass. And for the first time, she asked herself not what she had lost, but what she still had. "What am I waiting for?" She whispered into the morning. She already knew the answer. Nothing, no one. That afternoon, she pulled a fresh notepad from the kitchen drawer. With slow, deliberate strokes, she began to write. "What do I own? What can I sell? What do I truly need?" She called a realtor. She scheduled a visit to the bank. She started searching online. Not for advice, not for Jacob's address, but for apartments, quiet ones in towns with bus lines, libraries, parks, sidewalks with benches. She didn't want luxury. She wanted life. It wasn't about proving a point. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even sorrow. It was something else. Something she hadn't allowed herself to consider for decades. Self-worth. She had once believed that motherhood meant sacrifice, that love was proven through endurance. And maybe some of that was true. But it was no longer the only truth. Because beneath the role of mother, beneath the weight of expectations, she was still Martha. A woman, a whole, thinking, feeling, resilient woman, and she was still here. So she did the unthinkable. She let go. She went through every drawer, every shelf, every box of forgotten things. She kept a few photos. Wrapped Tom's in a soft towel. Packed her favorite tea mug. Donated the rest. The china no one ever used, the quilts no one asked for, the books no one would read. She called a neighbor, borrowed a truck, and loaded what was left of her life into the back. And she drove, not away in bitterness, but forward with grace. For the first time in years, she wasn't waiting to be chosen. She chose herself. 6. The rebirth. Finding peace on her own terms. Martha's new apartment wasn't fancy. Just a small one-bedroom tucked inside a modest brick building on the edge of a quiet town. The floors creaked, the walls were thin, and the kitchen barely fit a fridge and stove. But the sunlight poured in every morning like a soft promise. And the silence, it no longer stung. It soothed. It didn't feel like absence anymore. It felt like space, room to breathe, to begin. Her neighbors were mostly retired. Kind, quiet. They smiled in the hallways and offered small talk in the laundry room. One even brought her homemade banana bread after she moved in. Martha didn't need much more than that. She took a job at a nearby church, cleaning before sunrise, before the pews filled with sound. It was simple work, but steady. Enough to keep her fridge full, the lights on, and to treat herself to a slice of pie now and then from the diner across the street. Each day began the same. Tie back her hair, lace up her walking shoes, tuck her little radio into her pocket, and step out into the cool morning air. She liked that part, walking before the town was fully awake. At the church, she'd mop the floors while humming along to the oldies, dust the altar, straighten the hymnals. Sometimes she'd light a candle, not out of ritual but remembrance. Before she left, she'd sit quietly in the back pew. Not to pray, really, just to be, to breathe, to exist fully, quietly, and without demand. And for the first time in a very long time, that was enough. Her days found a rhythm of their own. Tuesdays, groceries. Thursdays, laundry. Sundays, writing letters, not to Jacob, not anymore, but to herself. Notes of gratitude, bits of memory, dreams for no one else to approve. She stopped sending care packages. Stopped checking the mailbox like it owed her something. The silence that once felt cruel now became a kind of strength. She learned to enjoy her own company. She planted mint and basil in clay pots on the windowsill. Hung a wind chime just outside her door that danced gently in the breeze. Every Friday, she walked to the corner store and bought herself flowers, always fresh, always for her. Sometimes she'd see a mother and child pass by the window hand in hand. Her heart would ache a little, because real love never disappears, but she no longer lived in that ache. She acknowledged it, then let it drift away. Like steam rising from her teacup, she had done her part, loved, sacrificed, given more than most would understand, and now she gave something back to herself. One quiet evening, sitting with a warm mug of chamomile in her hands, she looked out the window at the street lamps flickering to life. A car passed, a dog barked in the distance. The world carried on, and in the hush of that moment she felt it. Peace. Not the peace that comes from being needed, but the kind that blooms when you realize you don't have to earn your worth. She looked around her small apartment. The books she'd chosen for herself, the chair that fit her back just right, the photo of Tom on the shelf beside the flowers she'd bought that morning. And she whispered softly, "I'm still here." Not as an afterthought, not as someone waiting to be remembered, but as someone who had finally remembered herself. No pension, no savings, no child to catch her when she stumbled, but she had her own 2 feet, her steady hands. Her sharp mind, her quiet dignity, and most of all, her new life, and in that she had everything. You are not alone. Martha's story isn't an exception, it's a reflection. It mirrors the lives of countless women whose sacrifices are so deeply woven into the fabric of their families that they become invisible. They are the mothers who give without asking, the wives who hold the world together while theirs quietly unravels, the caretakers who are never taken care of. And far too often, when the noise of everyone else's lives fades, these women are left behind. Told that aging means disappearing. That value fades when usefulness does. But Martha did something radical. She chose to stay. She chose herself. And in that choice, she gave us all permission to believe something that should never have been forgotten. You matter, not because someone needs you, not because you give, but because you exist. No pension, no savings, no one to lean on. Still, you are whole, you are worthy, you are allowed to take up space. So maybe you're listening to this on a quiet afternoon. Maybe you're alone in a house that once felt full. Maybe your name hasn't been called in days. Hear this now. You are not invisible, you are not too late. You are not less because someone forgot to say your name. You are a woman, made of memory, of strength, of stories no one else can tell. And your life, yes, even now, is still yours to claim. You are not alone, you never have been.